course, a must-have. You had Cheetos, you had dried mango. So what was and you had the mashed potatoes. What was your protein intake like? Did you take protein bars or what was that? Or would you kind of go without?
I didn't really have a whole lot of protein, to be quite honest with you. And that was
Okay.
definitely probably something that I should have brought. I did have some beef jerky that I munched on, but I tried to let that kind of last throughout the trip. I think I finished it off halfway through. But yeah, the tuna fish I had, and I did have some protein bars, but for me, it's like I don't eat those on any other day
Hmm.
of my life, and like granola bars just aren't my thing. So I really, honestly, when I got to Blue Mountain Lake, I tossed them. I was like, this is just weight that I'm never gonna want to eat. Like
Sure.
I ate like maybe one or two of them, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore.
Okay. It's good to know,
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's a good point you bring up that you shouldn't, if you're going to do this or any sort of big hike, you shouldn't be eating things that you don't normally eat because you don't know how you're going to react to them. And this is not
exactly.
the place to find out you're going to react poorly to them.
Right. And the reason why I brought them in the first place is because I knew that it was just like dense packed calories, but I was just like not at all enjoyable to have for
Sure.
me personally. But I forgot to mention the Justin's peanut butter packets and
Okay.
almond
Yeah.
butter was
Sure.
super key. I really enjoyed those. I had one of those every day in the morning, and it was just such a great like little pick me up, I guess you could say. But I was like 7 or 8 grams of protein, I think it was, and one of those packets isn't a huge like amount, but it certainly helped.
Hmm. Now, did you have any real meals throughout? Because I know you end up in a couple towns for a very short period of time, but did you have any real meals or was it everything that you brought with you?
It was everything that I brought
All
with me.
right.
Oh, believe me, I was looking for the Oxbow Diner, which is, by the way, not where I thought it was. I thought I was gonna pass it on the way, like following the trail, but it's not. It's actually down on like the right hand side of the road, but we'll get into that another point in the
Sure.
story.
Sure.
But no, I was longing for a big juicy cheeseburger and some French fries, and it did not happen for me at all in the journey, unfortunately.
No trail magic happening for you this time.
No.
What a bummer. All right, well, let's dive right in and let's start at the beginning. Day one. Grab your maps, everyone. We're going to go through the map. Danielle has the map. I have the map. We're going to go through it. Starting at day one. It took her 8 days. So day one, you started in Northville. So you went northbound to Lake Placid. What time did you begin? And day one, take us through it.
So originally I wanted to start at like bright and early, like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. It took us a little while to get down to Northville. It took a little bit of a wrong turn to get into town, but eventually found our way, and I was on the trail by 10:30 a.m. Did my normal picture at the arch. I went to Stewart's, slammed a quick Gatorade, threw it away, and just kind of did a last minute run through of my pack just to make sure there wasn't anything in any side pockets that I didn't want with me. I ended up finding a pocket knife, a really heavy pocket knife that I never intended to bring with me, and I gave that to my friend, like, please take this.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on my way across the bridge there, and I was like, this is great. It was an emotional time for me. I was kind of nervous. I was unsure of myself. Of course, I've never done anything like this before. I was walking along and just taking in everything. Um, I eventually crossed the route 123, it is? Yes, across 123. There's a little ice cream stand there. Bummer it wasn't open. It would have been really cool to have that for a last minute endeavor. So one thing that I've realized as I was walking up that zero point 0.8, you start immediately climbing. And of course, this is the point where your pack is the absolute heaviest it's going to be.
Sure.
So that wasn't enjoyable. And then I took the right there. This is right along Gifford Valley. But that 0.8 was just it just felt like straight. It probably wasn't. I might be exaggerating, but that's what it feels like when you have like a 30-pound pack on your back.
Sure.
And then I finally got into the woods there, and I was like, geez, the like 3 or so miles it took me to get there. It was pretty brutal. And then I got in, and it was just all uphill all over again. So I was like, I am really in for it. Like, I have 30 pounds on my back, and I'm just really not sure if this is like for me. Like, am I really gonna make it? And then I finally started descending this little mountain and started crossing into this little mud lake area, which I don't really remember seeing. And I started seeing or hearing the West Stony Creek, and that is wide, very wide. And then I was looking around just to see if I could see anybody because I saw that there was a couple people that um, signed into the trail register ahead of me, and I saw this lady across the way, and it was so cute. She actually like waved to me, and it was almost like a friend that I never had. She was just like waving to me like, hey, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. This might be like my first friend on the trail. So I'm like looking for like a spot to cross, and the water was pretty low, and I really didn't have a problem crossing. I just had to like walk up a little bit, but that's something to keep in mind, especially if it like rains a couple of days before your trip. It could very well be up to your knee, up to your waist, at any point really. So I crossed. I talked to her for a little while, and she was telling me that she planned on being on the trail for at least 2 weeks, and she said that she started at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I immediately knew that she was definitely hiking at a slower pace than I intended to.
Sure.
And like while I was talking to her, I was thinking like, oh, like maybe I could just hike with her and have a friend. But then I was just also trying to keep in mind like this is for me. Like I have to do this by myself.
Yeah, you had a goal set and time to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kept going, and it was pretty easy going. Like it was after West Stony Creek, it was just kind of like rolling hills and some flats, and then I finally crossed Route 6, and I saw the road and saw some signs for Woods Lake, and I could hear some people. I could hear the crackling of fire, and some people that were camping next to me. And I was like, great, 12 miles in, I'm gonna sit down right here. And I was planning to camp at Woods Lake to have an easy start. I didn't want to go, you know, I know that some people even go as far as Silver Lake, and I just wanted to sit and just take it in. This is my first night by myself. I wanted to just take it easy. So
Smart. Plus, you gave yourself
yeah,
a 2 day cushion anyway, so make the first day enjoyable because it's going to get harder from there. A smart move.
yeah, absolutely. So, and at this campsite that I stayed at, there was like this little drying rack made with a log. So I took off the clothes that I was wearing and I just hung it up to dry because I was sweaty, and I dipped my head in the lake, Woods Lake there, and I was like, this is awesome. I set up my tent, and as soon as I set up my tent, this wind started rolling in, and this like started pouring. And these two guys, they were younger. I actually remembered seeing them just as I was leaving West Stony Creek. They came in, and they kind of looked like they were unsure if they wanted to stay. And I was like, you guys can totally camp here. It's pouring. Like there's plenty of room. So they immediately started setting up camp, and they were definitely ultralight, like had a tarp. And I was like, oh my God, if this wind and rain blows in, they're gonna be so uncomfortable. They didn't really say too much, and we kind of just kept to ourselves. And I took off the next morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, packed up everything, shook off my tent, and grabbed my bear bag. And
Had a peanut butter packet and then was on your way.
yep, yep. I started right out with my frog togs on because rain and all that just collects on the brush, and they'll just hold on and it'll drench you all the way through. So I started right out with that.
So, real quick before we get going on day two. So, day one was it 12 miles or so? A little more than 12 miles? Is that what it was total?
Yep, 12 miles total for day
Okay.
one.
And before we even continue on day two, what did you bring? What did you bring as far as clothing goes?
Oh, sure. So for clothing, I had a Columbia t-shirt that I wore most of the time. It's like a tech wick or moisture wicking t-shirt. And then for pants, I was wearing these moisture wicking Allegro joggers from EMS. They're not like a fleece or like a legging. They're kind of like a looser kind of a pant with like a cuffed on the bottom, which it was super comfortable and like stretchy. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. I could do like squats if I wanted to. And I actually ended up sleeping in them a lot of the time. For a shirt, I had a Columbia like fisherman type of shirt. I forget what the name of it, but it rolled up so I could have it like 3/4 sleeve. It had some nice ventilation like on the back, and it was also moisture wicking. So everything that I wore on me was moisture wicking.
Which makes perfect sense. So, day one, you camped at Woods Lake, just along the lake. I assume it's not a campsite, is it, or was it just
Oh
literally
yeah,
along the
definitely a
lake?
campsite.
Oh,
There
it
was
is. Okay,
multiple campsites around
got
the
it.
lake. I think the one that we stayed at was the last one on the lake, and it's definitely the one that I would recommend. So when you walk in, you're going to see, you're going to probably see, if not even hear somebody to your left. You're going to want to keep going right around the lake. And the very last one there is the one that we stayed at. And that has like the nice, like little drying rack. And it's like higher up above the water too, which is kind of nice. You can like walk down. There's even some blueberry bushes if you look real close. I was picking a couple of those when I got there.
Very cool. Good advice. All right, here we go. Day 2. So we're
Day
starting at
two.
Woods Lake. And so what was your mileage for today? And take us through it.
So the mileage for today, I believe it was 17 miles. And so I was shooting for Mud Lake, and it was basically a thing where I was going to continue to walk and see how I felt at Silver Lake and see how I felt there. And if anybody was there, make a decision if I wanted to continue on to Mud Lake, because that was, a good 20-mile push, almost 20 miles. The walk was relatively easy. It was kind of like rolling hills. You pass through some swamplands, go over some nice footbridges. I passed through a couple of like, it seemed like primitive campsites. There, if you can see them on the map, there's these 2 yellow dots between Woods Lake and Silver Lake, and there's a little primitive spot right next to Silver Lake too. They don't look like they've ever been camped at. Like, I was really looking for them to see, because I like to be able to look at a map and make sure that I'm seeing what I should be seeing. So
Of
a
course.
couple of those spots didn't really like show up to me to be like anything that anybody actually camped at. So, and it was also very wet and very buggy there. So I would not recommend, if you can, I would absolutely go through to Silver Lake, if not Mud Lake. I would totally bypass that marshy area. So I yeah, I stopped at Rock Lake to like eat something real quick and just kind of stretch out, and I continued to Silver Lake. And I got to Silver Lake about midday, like 12, maybe 1 o'clock. And there was some gentlemen camping there. They had everything like the blue cooler, and they had their chairs out, and they looked like they were having a grand old time. So I just kept walking.
They were basically moving in at that point.
Oh yeah, they definitely had it all set up, and that was cool. I actually felt fine, so I was like, well, I'm going to keep pressing forward to Mud Lake, obviously keeping in mind that there wasn't really any noted campsite besides Canary Pond. So I walked through to Canary Pond, and that was probably the most beautiful actual campsite that I have seen. Um, it's just like surrounded by these tall white pines and like this little peninsula type of campsite with full with blueberries. So I stopped there, ate lunch, and just kind of like took it in. It was a nice breeze. Took a little bit of a break, and then I kept going and started to see a little bit more some marshland. I started to see some moose dropping. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to see a moose. Like, this is awesome. Kept going. Didn't see a moose, by the way.
Bummer.
I finally got to Mud Lake, and it was starting to get pretty late in the day. It was probably getting to like 5 or 6 o'clock. But I really, every day, I really just wanted to be off trail by like 4:30, just to give myself time to stretch out, set up everything, start my fire if I needed one, or hang my bear bag, make my food, all that stuff. So yeah, I got to Mud Lake and just set my pack down, and I walked out to the lake, and I immediately started hearing loons. I'm like, all right, this is awesome. There's nobody there. I set up everything. I started eating, set up my bear bag, and just kind of took the load off.
And if you're not following along with the map, Mud Lake has a lean-to, as do many of the places along this trail, which is one of the popular elements of this trail. But you had a tent with you, so you could do either. But a lot of people end up doing this trail without a tent due to the abundance of lean-tos throughout.
Yes. And another good thing that something that I personally would point out from my experience is that even if you don't bring a tent with you, if you go in the season anytime between like June, July, August, any of that time, you're gonna have bugs no matter what. I mean,
Oh,
they are
yeah.
everywhere. So, it's probably a good idea to bring a tent because, and when I stayed at Mud Lake, I was absolutely just destroyed by mosquitoes. Like, I was wearing my bug net jacket over my face, zipped up, and if I turned my head just even the slightest way, if my cheek was touching the netting, they would bite me through it. They would bite my hands, they'd bite anything exposed. And then I was just trying to keep the bug net off of my face enough so that, they would stay off of me, but just the noise of them pinging off of it and buzzing constantly was just enough for me to like just be like, I'm done. So I just literally crawled into my tent like